Hello, and welcome back to the Nostalgic Futurist podcast. As you may all know, Disneyland has reopened, and it is a crazy place to be right now. Now, I'm going to be mainly talking about things I experienced when I went on June 1st and 2nd, and those things may be changing all the time, but I thought I would give tips and tricks for people who are going sometime soon, and kind of also a time capsule of what it was like to go to Disneyland during a global pandemic that's winding down. Also, made my own New Orleans Square ears for this trip. Now, let me tell you something about ear construction. They're really cute, but they're super heavy, and I had to carry them around all day. They're super fun, though. Let's start off with what did limited capacity feel like? The park felt pretty empty when I first walked in. Main Street was pretty much clear. There was just dribbles and drabbles of people walking around, and me and my friend were like, oh, sweet. This is what limited capacity is gonna feel like. We hopped on to the line for the train, and them barely loading the train means that you're waiting in the station for a really long time. In fact, the social distancing on the train didn't really make a lot of sense. You would see train cars where, the two rows that face out those train cars, they would put people in the front row, but not behind them. I mean, there would be maybe 6 people total per train car that can normally hold 20 people? So it was pretty frustrating. We were in a pretty short line and we had to wait for 3 trains. When we did end up getting on the train, we rode around the entire park, one full circuit, and we then very quickly learned how busy limited capacity can feel. Because while Disneyland's capacity is limited, it is really cramped because of where they're sticking all of the standby lines. So as of the day I went, there was no indoor dining except Blue Bayou and no indoor queuing. So if a ride has an indoor queue, they just walked you through it. You were not standing inside with other people. But a lot of these outdoor rides, even if they do have an extensive outdoor queue like Indiana Jones, had to then expand past their own queuing to then either, like in Indiana Jones's case, go into the Jungle Cruise extended queue, or in Pirates or Thunder's case, going into walkways, which made walkways more full and complex. You'd be walking around and you'd be like, am I in a line? Am I walking? I wasn't sure. In fact, for the Pirates of the Caribbean line and the Haunted Mansion line, you had to actually cross pedestrian traffic from one side of the line that was near the Rivers of America over to where the actual queue was on the same side of the walkway as the ride was. It was a lot. So, as a helpful tool, I am going to flash a map up here that is going to show you exactly where a lot of these lines were queuing when they were extremely long. So that if you go, you have kind of a general idea of where you should be looking for the entrances to these attractions. As you can see, Pirates of the Caribbean starts back near where the Mark Twain loads. Thunder Mountain was reaching all the way back to the entrances to Galaxy's Edge. The Haunted Mansion sometimes was starting in front of Splash Mountain. Splash Mountain got really confusing because you'd line up, but as you went through the queue, you'd leave the actual queue to just stand out in the walkway as you got closer and closer to the ride, which made it very easy for people to cut. Now, one great thing about all these queues that are socially distanced to the max was that things moved quicker. Even though the rides themselves weren't taking a lot of capacity, they did move people through the line pretty quickly because your eye was deceived by how much space there was because of social distancing. So for example, Space Mountain. That ride queue would start all the way out where the Fast Pass distribution was for Space Mountain, and it would loop into the little waiting area outside of what used to be Captain EO, and then take you up the ramp and up to the roof. And the roof wasn't even wrapped that many times. It was just a one-way wrap and then the way back. And you went through the Fast Pass entrance as opposed to the traditional Space Mountain entrance, probably to give us more of a full wrap all the way around. But like I said, there's no indoor queuing. So as soon as you got to the doorway that led to inside, you walked all the way through until you got inside the chamber where you load. However, when you got in there, they had a plexiglass plate between the two lines that the cast members draw from to put on the ride. And everyone would be like cramped together. No one was looking at the 6-foot distance markers anymore. And so that seems a little counterintuitive at times. But when we got on Space Mountain, we would start all the way at the Fast Pass distribution and it would say like 55 minutes, but we'd be on the ride in 30 or less. And that was the thing. A lot of the ride numbers were overcompensating for how many people are in line. Probably to help try to move people around the park. Stay away from Haunted Mansion for a little while, stay away from this. Another thing that we experienced was that there would be caps to the standby line. So at one point we went to get in line for Haunted Mansion and a cast member came up behind us and started telling anybody who walked up after us, hey, for right now the queue is closed to help ease people back into the actual like roped off queue before we let more people in. But that was confusing because people would walk up and then just stay behind the cast member and be like, well, we'll just wait till you reopen it, which then created a line. These poor cast members having to coordinate all of this and deal with people cutting each other and not knowing where queues begin. I mean, I had to ask so many cast members, wait, where's the entrance to Pirates of the Caribbean? Oh, it's like a mile walk away from the ride? Okay. Now let's talk dining. I went on a Tuesday, Wednesday, which is probably less busy than Saturday, Sunday. And it was right after Memorial Day and right before Avengers Campus opened. So we were hoping we might hit a little bit of a lull in the crowds. Now, I'd been hearing that for mobile order, a lot of people had said that it was taking hours for their food to be ready, especially with Dole Whips at Tropical Hideaway. And while that was true, the first day we got there, Tropical Hideaway was already gone and it was 11 a.m. The second day, there was still availability for Tropical Hideaway until about 1 p.m. and then it was gone. But the other restaurants were pretty much available within the next hour, hour and a half, which is pretty reasonable if you're planning food. Me and my friend were able to be like, hey, I kind of want like a brunchy thing. And we were able to make the reservation for that at like 10:30 to have it ready at 11:30, which was perfect because we rode Space Mountain. But I will say that the mobile order thing is kind of confusing to me because you order your food, right? You're socially distanced. But then when you go to pick it up, your thing will say like, hey, your food's ready. And while they're preparing it, they tell you to just stand by nearby and wait. Well, everybody's standing nearby, clumped up, waiting for their food. So it seemed counterintuitive to that rather than just letting people queue up in a standby to get food. Another really difficult thing was Disneyland still has the rule that you can't eat or drink while walking around or while in queues. So if you want to eat or drink, like just a sip of a water bottle, you have to sit down somewhere that's a designated dining area. The problem is, because even though they've given a lot more designated dining areas than there are typically, anything like attractions or restaurants that were closed had extra tables and benches put out for people to sit at. It was so hard to find one that was open, especially one in the shade. Obviously, that makes sense. But it was hard if you just wanted to be like, I just want a sip of my water bottle, and you have to go find a bench and there's people at every bench. So that was difficult. It made it especially difficult at peak dining times like lunchtime, like 12 to 2, or dinner from like 5 to 8. So that's something to keep track of. Now let's talk virtual queues. Rise of the Resistance is still doing boarding groups just like it did before. However, there is a difference. You can now choose to join a boarding group at 7 a.m. and you can try again at noon. Now, me and my friend, we did the first day, we forgot at 7 a.m. But at noon, I was in line for Space Mountain. I pushed through and we got a boarding group. However, our boarding group wasn't called until 7:30 p.m. And then the ride broke down right as we got in line and didn't come back up for the rest of the day since the park closed at 9. And we had noticed that Rise of the Resistance had been closed a lot that day. It had previously been like completely not working for the day for 2 days prior to our visit. And we were like really worried. And they were only doing small groups of boarding, like group 35 to 37, like only 2 groups rather than before when they would do like 20 to 30 groups at a time. The second day was a little bit better. The Rise of Resistance didn't open until I think like 11:30. And even then it was up for a half hour, down for an hour, up for a half hour, down for an hour. And we finally got on the ride. We were like boarding group 35. And we finally got on the ride at like 1:32 p.m. because of how many times it broke down. Now there's also the added Indiana Jones virtual queue. And just to clear this up, because I wasn't sure about it at first, you can of course have a boarding group for Rise of the Resistance and a virtual queue reservation for Indiana Jones. You can have those together. You cannot have Web Slingers and Rise of the Resistance together. That's different. And those are both boarding groups, whereas Indiana Jones is a virtual line. Now, it still technically gives you a boarding group, and they've added this nice feature since the last time the parks were open where you can see how many minutes they approximately think it will be until you're called, which is great because they'll even up the time when the ride breaks down to like account for it so that you can still go, okay, so it says it added a 30-minute wait and it's not boarding right now. Good to know. Now, Indiana Jones did not have the virtual queue all day. It started off with standby, then by about 10:30, 11, it went to virtual queue, and then by about 7 p.m., it went back to standby. Now, me and my friend did it both ways. The first day, we did Indiana Jones standby, and it was a good 25-minute wait, but you walk through the entire interior queue, which makes it feel a lot shorter. The second day, we did the virtual queue, and we basically walked on that ride. It was wonderful. Another crazy thing that happened though, I went dressed as New Orleans Square, as you can see in these wonderful pictures. And my parasol, I accidentally left at a table, one of the standing tables by the rivers of America where you can eat. I went back within 15 minutes and my umbrella was gone. So me and my friend had the idea, we'll ask some cast members around and see if anybody's walking around with it. So I went to go ask some cast members if they'd seen it. Nobody had seen it. And my friend walked the Pirates of the Caribbean queue and saw somebody with my parasol. So we went to the Pirates exit to wait for them to get off the ride, and they never came all the way through. So I'm still missing a parasol. If you see a cute white, New Orleans Square looking parasol somewhere, just, hit me up. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my Princess Leia Disney Bound. There's a girl I follow on Instagram who had this gorgeous Princess Leia Disney Bound that she did, and I was like, oh my gosh, she actually bought that dress. I could buy it. And I looked it up and it was $400. And I said, nope, not doing that. So I started looking online. Well, maybe I can find a white dress that's similar and build the belt and blah, blah, blah. Didn't find any cute dresses. Oh, what about a pantsuit? What about a jumpsuit? Nothing good. So I was like, great, I will build a white jumpsuit and put the belt on. So I get the pattern, I get the fabric, which only cost me $30 compared to the $400 for that dress. It was not worth that much, let me tell you. And I built the belt and everything, and it just didn't look, it looked too costumey. But I just wore the white jumpsuit and people knew who I was. And that was exactly what I wanted. I went and met with Ray and Chewbacca, and Chewie was just like, oh, I love you. Oh, this is exactly, oh, hello, Princess Leia. He's obviously not talking, but you could tell that he was like, oh, I miss you. So it was really fun. A lot of people recognized who I was. A lot of people complimented the outfit, that's my main goal with a Disney Bound. If someone, even if it's not directly to my face, can name who I am, I won the day. Now I'm going to round up this episode with one of my own personal triumphs. I have not been able to ride Splash Mountain for 12 years because I am so afraid of that feeling of dropping. So when I was about 12, I decided, nope, I no longer want to ride Splash Mountain. I don't want to ride Incredicoaster, and I don't want to ride Guardians because I don't like the feeling it gives me. I had made this joke during the pandemic that I was like, I would ride Splash Mountain 1,000 times just so Disneyland could reopen. And people were like, no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't ride Splash Mountain. You hate it. And so over time of COVID and thinking about it, I was like, I actually think I might try it. It's been 12 years. And so I have, 12-year-old brain in there that's like, oh my gosh, Splash Mountain is the scariest thing ever. I could never do this. And years and years of nightmares about Splash Mountain. Yes, I have nightmares about Splash Mountain for some weird reason. So I go with my friend and we get in line and I'm really nervous. I get a lot of anxiety about feeling that drop, and like this drop has haunted me for years. And we get through the queue and we finally get in the boat. And I was like, as long as I get myself in the boat and we push off, I can't do anything about it. So we get in and we're riding around and I'm just like tensing up and my friend's trying to talk me down and talk me through it. And I'm going and I'm going. And I didn't remember how short the ride was. In all these years I'd been thinking about it and listening to the soundtrack, I thought it was a lot longer ride before you got to the drop. And it isn't, because I was riding and all of a sudden it was there, just like, sudden death wants to kill you now. It was like, I was not ready. And I get to the top of the drop and my friend told me, she's like, look at Disneyland. Don't look down the drop, it'll make it worse. So I see the Matterhorn and I'm like, Matterhorn, I love you. You're broken right now, but I love you. And then we go down the drop. And as you can see in this picture, I entered my friend. That's my arm. That's just my arm, because the rest of me is inside of my friend. So after that, I wanted this photo to prove I'd done it, and all I had was my arm. So the next day I was like, I think to get over this fear, I've got to ride it again because I'm already scared to do it. And so she was like, yeah, we got to do it. So we get in line behind this cute mom with her 2 little daughters, and one of her daughters is probably like 6 years old. And she's like, Mom, this ride looks pretty scary, like looking at the drop and everything. She's like, I don't know if I want to do it. And the mom's like, it's fine. We're going to have fun on Splash Mountain. It's going to be great. So we're in line behind these girls and we get on the ride and they get on in the boat right in front of us. And so we're following them through the ride. And it was so funny because we get to the big sudden death section. We're going up and those little girls drop off the hill before us. And you can hear the little one just screaming bloody murder as she goes down that hill and probably regrets all her life choices that her mom ever put her through. But she looked fine after the ride, so like, go her. So we get to the top of the drop again and I'm like, I have to actually look at the drop this time because my brain didn't see it. I was inside my friend's shoulder. So I'm like, okay, great. I'm gonna lean to the left, she's gonna lean to the right so that we're both in the photo. We get a good photo of me on it. I see the drop, like we're gonna get over this thing. And we go down and this is the picture. I mean, I guess you can tell it's the outfit I wore that day, but I guess I gotta keep riding it. So for any of you out there who are scared of drops or certain rides at Disney, I will be spending the next few times I go to Disney forcing myself to go down Splash Mountain to, kind of desensitize myself to it. And then hopefully we can try Incredicoaster and build our way up to Guardians because I do really love the Guardians of the Galaxy and would love to ride that ride. Well, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Nostalgic Futurist podcast. And this one was kind of a long time coming, finally getting to go back to Disney and live that experience again. This is kind of almost a time capsule now because June 15th will probably change a lot of things at Disney, but it may not change things as quickly as we'd like or hope they do. Thanks, and I'll see you for the next episode.